Most people wake up and give their power away before their feet even touch the floor. They replay yesterday's problems, scroll someone else's life, and let fear decide how the day will feel. And without realizing it, they program weakness into their mind before the day even begins. But here's the truth that changes everything. Your morning is not just the start of your day. It's the moment you decide who you're going to be. And if you don't choose your words, your fears will choose them for you. Most people underestimate the power of a single word. They think words are just sounds, just language, just something you say and move on from. But that belief alone is costing them their confidence, their momentum, and their future, because words are not neutral. Every word you repeat to yourself carries emotion, and emotion creates identity, and identity determines behavior. This is not philosophy. This is how the human nervous system works. Think about it. You don't act based on reality. You act based on the story you tell yourself about reality. Two people can face the same problem, one collapses, the other rises. Same circumstances, different words running in their head. One says, I can't handle this. The other says, I'll figure this out. And in that moment, their lives split in completely different directions. What you consistently say to yourself becomes who you believe you are. And who you believe you are quietly runs your life. Most people never consciously choose that identity. They inherit it from parents, from teachers, from society, from a moment of failure they never emotionally recovered from. They said one sentence years ago, I'm not good enough, I'm bad at this, I'm just not confident. And they've been living inside that sentence ever since. Your brain's job is not to make you successful. Its job is to keep you consistent. So once you label yourself, your brain works day and night to prove that label right. If you tell yourself you're lazy, your brain will find evidence. If you tell yourself you're weak, it will search for confirmation. And the most dangerous part, it will feel logical. It will feel true. It will feel like just the way you are. But listen carefully. There is no such thing as just the way you are. There is only conditioning. And conditioning can be changed. The words you speak internally are instructions to your nervous system. They tell your body how to feel. They tell your mind what to expect. They tell your attention what to look for. When you wake up in the morning and your first thought is stress, your body tightens, your breathing changes, your posture shifts, your energy drops, all before anything actually happens. Not because of the day, but because of the words. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine waking up and intentionally choosing words that create strength before the world has a chance to speak to you. Not because you feel strong, but because you decide to be. That's where power lives, not in waiting for confidence, but in commanding it. People think confidence comes from results. That's backwards. Confidence comes from identity-driven action. You act confidently because you see yourself as someone who does, and that identity is built word by word, repetition by repetition. The strongest people you admire are not stronger because they never doubt. They're stronger because when doubt shows up, they speak to themselves differently. They dawn. Say, why is this happening to me? They say, what is this trying to teach me? They don't say, I'm overwhelmed. They say, I'm stretched and I'll adapt. Same situation. Different words, different identity. Your inner dialogue is not background noise. It is the steering wheel of your life. And most people let it run on autopilot, repeating patterns that were installed years ago. But the moment you become aware of your words, you regain choice. And choice is the birthplace of change. This is why mornings matter so much. When you first wake up, your mind is open. It's receptive. It's like wet cement. And whatever you press into it hardens as the day goes on. If you start the day with pressure, comparison, and self-criticism, you harden that state. But if you start the day with intentional words, strong words, you condition resilience before the challenges arrive. You don't wait for the world to define you. You define yourself first. And here's what most people miss. Your brain doesn't respond to logic. It responds to repetition and emotion. You can't whisper weak words and expect strong behavior. You have to say words that create a physiological shift, words that change how you breathe, how you stand, how you move, words that force your nervous system to wake up and align. At first, it might feel unnatural. That's okay. Growth always does. The old identity will resist because it wants to survive. But if you stay consistent, something powerful happens. The words stop feeling like something you're trying to believe and start feeling like something you. This is how identity is built, not in one breakthrough moment, but in daily reinforcement. Quiet, relentless, intentional. And understand this, the world is always responding to who you believe you are, not who you hope to be, not who you wish you were, who you decide you are. That decision starts internally with the words you allow to live rent-free in your mind. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your identity. Change the words and you change the identity. Change the identity and your behavior follows without force. So every morning before the doubt speaks, before the noise starts, before the past tries to remind you of who you used to be, you speak first, because the strongest voice in your life must be your own. Most people think their day starts when something happens. A message comes in, a problem shows up, a demand appears. And from that moment on, they're reacting. They call it normal. They call it realistic. But what they don't realize is this: the day was already decided before any of that occurred, because the real beginning of your day isn't external. It's internal. It's the first few minutes after you wake up, when your mind is open, unguarded, and incredibly programmable. Your brain doesn't flip a switch the moment you open your eyes. It eases into the day. And during that window, before urgency kicks in, before distractions flood in, you are in the most powerful state to shape how the rest of the day will feel. This is not superstition. This is how the nervous system works. In Thos E, first moments, you are laying down emotional tracks. And once those tracks are laid, the mind tends to follow them automatically. Most people waste that window without even knowing it. They reach for their phone, they check notifications, they absorb someone else's agenda before setting their own, and in doing so, they let the outside world program their internal state. Stress becomes the default, comparison becomes the lens, urgency becomes the tone, and then they wonder why the day feels heavy before it's even started. Here's the truth most people never hear. You don't wake up neutral, you wake up suggestible. And whatever you feed your mind in that moment becomes the filter through which you experience everything else. That's why two people can wake up to the same circumstances and experience entirely different days. One feels grounded and focused. The other feels rushed and overwhelmed. Same life, different morning. Think of your mind in the morning like a control center waiting for its first command. If you don't give it one, it will default to old patterns, old worries, old fears, old identities. The mind loves familiarity, even when familiarity is painful. So if you've spent years starting your mornings in worry, your brain will automatically return there unless you interrupt it. That interruption is intentional programming. When you choose what you say, what you focus on, and how you breathe in those first minutes, you are deciding how your nervous system will interpret the world for the next several hours. You're not pretending everything is perfect. You're conditioning yourself to respond with strength instead of panic. This is where people get it wrong. They think mindset work is about lying to yourself or avoiding reality. It's not. It's about choosing the state from which you face reality. You don't deny challenges, you prepare your system to handle them. Your body is always listening. When you wake up and immediately think about everything that could go wrong, your body tightens. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your energy contracts. You carry that state into every conversation, every decision, every problem. And again, nothing caused it except the morning. But when you wake up and intentionally create a state, calm, certainty, readiness, your body aligns with that command. Your breathing deepens, your posture shifts, your perception changes, problems don't disappear, but they feel manageable. And that difference is everything. This is why successful people are obsessed with their mornings, not because they're disciplined, robots, but because they understand leverage. A small shift at the start creates massive impact later. 5 intentional minutes in the morning can save you hours of emotional cleanup later in the day. And here's something important. You don't need a perfect routine. You need a consistent signal. A signal to your nervous system that says, I'm in charge today. That signal can be words, movement, breath, or focus, but it must be intentional. Most people let the day grab them. Powerful people grab the day first. Your morning is when you decide whether life happens to you or through you. When you set the tone internally, the external loses its power to knock you off center. You still feel emotions, you still face stress, but you're no longer at the mercy of it. And understand this, whatever state you enter in the morning becomes your emotional home base. Throughout the day, when things go wrong, your system doesn't return to neutral. It returns to the state you established first. If you start anxious, you return to anxiety. If you start focused, you return to focus. If you start empowered, you return to empowerment. That's why waiting for a good day to feel good is a losing game. You don't feel good because the day is good. The day becomes good because of how you feel walking into it. This is also why motivation alone isn't enough. Motivation is emotional. It fluctuates. But programming is structural. It changes what feels normal. When you program strength every morning, strength becomes familiar, calm becomes familiar, confidence becomes familiar. And once something feels familiar, your brain stops resisting it. People say, I'm just not a morning person. That's not a personality trait. That's conditioning. And conditioning can be rewritten, not through force, but through repetition. You don't need to dominate the morning. You need tone the first moment. That's it. Before the phone, before the noise, before the world asks anything of you, you take a breath, you choose your words, you choose your focus. And in that moment, you set the direction of your day. Because if you don't program your morning, your past will do it for you. Most people believe action creates emotion. They think once something good happens, they'll feel motivated, confident, or powerful. But that belief keeps them waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel inspired, waiting for life to change before they do. And while they wait, their life stays exactly the same. Because the truth works in the opposite direction. Emotion creates motion. The way you feel determines how you move, and how you move determines what you create. Every action you've ever taken was fueled by a feeling. You didn't get up and chase something because of logic alone. You moved because of excitement, fear, certainty, anger, love, or resolve. Emotion is the engine. Logic is just the steering wheel. And when the engine is weak, it doesn't matter how good the plan is, you won't go anywhere. Look at your own life. Think about the moments you were unstoppable. You weren't smarter than you are now. You weren't more prepared. You were in a powerful emotional state. Your energy was high. Your focus was clear. Your body was aligned. And in that state, you took actions that felt difficult before, but suddenly felt natural. Now think about the times. You knew exactly what to do, but didn't do it. Same knowledge, same opportunity, different emotional state, low energy, doubt, overwhelm. And suddenly the simplest action felt heavy. That's not a character flaw. That's emotional physics. Most people try to change their lives by forcing behavior while ignoring state. They make plans, they set goals, they write lists. But they never change how they feel in their body. So they burn out, they procrastinate, they quit. Not because they lack willpower, but because they're trying to drive with no fuel. Your emotional state determines your standards. When you feel powerful, you demand more from yourself. When you feel weak, you settle. Same person, different state. And here's the part that changes everything. You don't have to wait for emotion to show up. You can create it on command. Not by thinking different thoughts alone, but by changing your physiology and your language. Your body and your words are the fastest way to shift emotion. Emotion lives in the body first, not the mind. The way you breathe, the way you stand, the way you move. These are not side effects, they are causes. When you slump your shoulders, shallow your breath, and look down, your body sends a signal to your brain that says something's wrong. And your brain responds with doubt, fear, and hesitation. But when you change your body, when you breathe deeply, straighten your spine, lift your head, your nervous system receives a different message. It says, I'm safe, I'm ready, I'm in control. And Qi shifts almost instantly. Words amplify that shift. When you speak weakly to yourself, your body stays weak. When you speak with conviction, your body follows. This is why strong words matter. They don't just motivate you, they mobilize you. Think about it. The difference between I'll try and I'm doing this is not semantics, it's emotion. One creates uncertainty, the other creates commitment. One keeps you stuck, the other moves you forward. This is why repeating powerful words in the morning is not a motivational ritual. It's emotional training. You are conditioning your nervous system to associate certain words with strength, readiness, and certainty. Over time, those emotions become accessible faster. They become familiar. They become your default. And once emotion becomes your ally instead of your enemy, everything changes. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop arguing with doubt. You feel them, but they no longer control you because your emotional state is no longer reactive. It's intentional. Most people are emotional victims. They let traffic, emails, conversations, and memories decide how they feel. And then they wonder why they feel drained. But the strongest people don't eliminate negative emotion. They override it with a stronger one. Fear disappears in the presence of certainty. Anxiety dissolves in the presence of focus. Hesitation collapses in the presence of resolve. You don't fight emotion. You replace it, and this is where action becomes effort. Less. When you feel strong, you don't need discipline to act. You want to act. When you feel energized, movement is natural. When you feel certain, decision-making becomes simple. This is why people who master their emotional state appear confident even in uncertainty. They don't know the outcome any more than you do. They're just operating from a different internal environment. And that environment is trained daily through words, through movement, through breath, through repetition. You don't rise to big moments. You fall to your emotional conditioning. Under pressure, you don't become your best self. You become your trained self. And training doesn't happen in crisis. It happens in moments like the morning when you consciously generate the emotions you want to live from. So stop waiting to feel motivated. Stop waiting to feel confident. Those feelings are not rewards. They are tools, and tools are meant to be picked up and used. When you control your emotional state, you control your actions. When you control your actions, you control your results. And when you do that consistently, your life has no choice but to change. Because once emotion is on your side, motion becomes inevitable. Most people spend their lives searching for power in all the wrong places. They look for it in approval, in circumstances, in timing, and luck. They wait for someone to believe in them, to give them permission, to open a door. And every time they wait, they give their power away. Because our power doesn't come from what happens to you. It comes from what you own. Responsibility is the word most people misunderstand. They hear it and feel weight, blame, pressure. They think responsibility means everything is their fault. That's not what it means. Responsibility means everything eyes in your hands. And when something is in your hands, you can shape it, change it, and direct it. The moment you stop blaming, you stop leaking energy. Blame feels relieving for a second, but it keeps you trapped. It gives you an explanation without a solution. And explanations without solutions are the enemy of progress. Every time you say, that's just how they are, or this is how the world works, or I can't because of my past, you might feel justified, but you've also surrendered control. Powerful people don't waste time proving they're right. They focus on being effective. They don't ask, whose fault is this? They ask, what's my move? That shift changes everything. Because the moment you ask what your move is, your brain starts working for you instead of against you. Responsibility sharpens focus. When you own your life, you stop scattering your energy across complaints, excuses, and what ifs. You bring it back into the present moment. You become decisive, you become proactive, and suddenly opportunities appear where before you saw obstacles. Look at any area of your life where you feel stuck. If you're honest, there's a place where responsibility has been avoided, not consciously, but subtly. Maybe it's blaming time, blaming confidence, blaming circumstances, blaming other people's behavior. And as long as blame exists, growth is delayed. Taking responsibility doesn't mean you caused everything. It means you decide what happens next. You don't control the cards you're dealt, but you absolutely control how you play them. And the second you accept that truth, something shifts inside you. You stop feeling like life is happening to you. You start feeling like life is responding to you. That shift alone changes your posture, your tone, your energy. People can feel it. Responsibility creates presence, and presence creates influence. Most people underestimate how attractive responsibility is. When you own your choices, your mistakes, your growth, you radiate certainty. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to explain. You don't need to wait. You move forward. And that forward motion builds confidence faster than any affirmation ever could. This is why responsibility is the gateway to confidence. Confidence is not thinking you'll succeed every time. It's knowing that no matter what happens, you'll handle it. And that belief only comes from ownership, from trusting yourself to respond, adapt, and rise. The opposite of responsibility is victimhood, and victimhood is exhausting. It drains energy because it keeps you looking outward for relief. When will this change? When will they change? When will things get better? And while you wait, life passes. Responsibility brings you back into the driver's seat. It says, this is my life and I'm steering. Even if the road is rough, even if the weather is bad, you're still driving. And here's the paradox. Responsibility feels heavy at first, but it becomes incredibly liberating. Because once you accept that you are the source of your actions, you no longer have to wait for permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need approval. You act from choice, not reaction. This is where momentum is born. One own decision leads to another. One self-directed action leads to confidence, and confidence compounds. People often ask how to feel more powerful. The answer is simple, but not easy. Stop outsourcing responsibility. Stop giving your emotional state to other people. Stop giving your future to circumstances. Take it back, one choice at a time. Responsibility also builds self-respect. When you keep promises to yourself, when you act in alignment with your values, you trust yourself more. And self-trust is the foundation of everything else. Without it, motivation fades. With it, discipline becomes natural. And understand this, responsibility doesn't mean perfection. You will make mistakes, you will misjudge, you will fail. But when you own those moments instead of hiding from them, they become feedback instead of identity. They refine you instead of defining you. Every powerful life is built on this principle. If it's to be, it's up to me. Not in isolation, not in arrogance, but in ownership. You stop waiting for life to give you confidence. You generate it by taking responsibility for your actions, your mindset, and your growth. Because the moment you stop blaming, you start becoming powerful. Most people think change happens in big moments. They're waiting for the breakthrough day, the surge of motivation, the dramatic decision that flips everything overnight. They think intensity is the answer. Go all in, push hard, burn bright. And for a moment, that works. They feel fired up. They promise everything will be different this time, but then life shows up, energy drops, discipline fades, and they end up right back where they started, wondering what's wrong with them. Nothing is wrong with them. They were just using the wrong strategy. Intensity is exciting, but it's unreliable. It depends on emotion, and emotion fluctuates. Consistency, on the other hand, is quiet. It's not flashy, it doesn't feel heroic, but it's unstoppable because consistency doesn't ask how you feel, it asks who you've decided to be. Your life is not shaped by what you do once in a while. It's shaped by what you do every day without negotiation. The smallest repeated actions compound into massive results over time, and the reverse is also true. Small neglected actions compound into frustration, regret, and stagnation. Look closely at your own life. The areas where you feel strong and confident are not areas where you tried once. Your areas where you showed up again and again, and the areas where you feel stuck, those are usually places where effort was inconsistent. On again, off again, driven by mood instead of identity. Consistency is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters, repeatedly, even when it feels insignificant, especially when it feels insignificant, because that's when most people quit. The brain is wired to underestimate small actions. It wants immediate feedback, immediate reward. So when it doesn't see instant progress, it labels the effort as pointless. But progress doesn't announce itself early. It accumulates silently, and by the time it's visible, it looks like overnight success, when in reality, it's the result of daily repetition no one saw. This is why consistency beats intensity every time. Intensity spikes your energy. Consistency rewires your identity, and identity is what lasts. When you show up consistently, even in small ways, you send a message to yourself, I do what I say I'll do. That message builds trust, and self-trust is fuel. It makes the next action easier, and the next one easier still. Most people try to change their life by demanding more from themselves all at once. They overhaul everything, new habits, new goals, new standards, and it collapses under its own weight. Not because they're weak, but because they skip the part where consistency is built gradually. You don't build strength by lifting the heaviest weight once. You build it by lifting manageable weight repeatedly. The same is true for confidence, discipline, and belief. You don't become consistent by promising more. You become consistent by starting smaller than your ego wants to and staying with it. Consistency trains your nervous system. It teaches your body what normal feels like. When you act consistently, discipline stops feeling like force and starts feeling like familiarity. You no longer debate whether to act, you just do. And that shift is powerful. People often say they lack willpower. What they really lack is rhythm. Willpower is finite. Rhythm is sustainable. Once something becomes part of your rhythm, it requires less energy to maintain. That's why the hardest part is always the beginning. Not because the action is hard, but because the pattern is new. Consistency also removes drama from growth. You stop needing to feel inspired. You stop making excuses. You stop overthinking. You just show up. And in that simplicity, momentum is born. Here's something most people don't realize. Inconsistency creates emotional chaos. When you're inconsistent, you're constantly restarting. And restarting is exhausting. It makes you question yourself. It erodes confidence. It turns simple goals into emotional battles. But consistency creates calm because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're aligned. And the beautiful thing about consistency is that it doesn't require perfection. You will miss days, you will stumble. But consistency is not about breaking the chain. It's about never letting the break become an identity. You return, you continue, you stay in motion. This is how real transformation happens, not through dramatic effort, but through quiet persistence, through doing the right thing even when no one is watching, even when there's no immediate reward, even when it feels boring, because boredom is the gateway to mastery. When you can stay consistent past the point of excitement, you separate yourself from the majority of people who quit when novelty fades. Consistency also builds emotional strength. Each day you show up, you reinforce the belief that you are reliable. And when you believe you're reliable, you trust yourself under pressure. That trust becomes confidence, not the loud kind, but the unshakable kind. You don't need to dominate your life in one day. You need to win the day again and again. Small wins stack. And stacked wins change how you see yourselves. So stop waiting for the perfect mood. Stop chasing intensity. Choose consistency. Choose the small action you can repeat. And commit to showing up, not once, but daily. Because consistency doesn't just change what you do, it changes who you become. Most people spend their lives searching for something outside themselves to finally make them feel whole. They think confidence will come when they earn more, when they're recognized, when circumstances improve, when someone finally validates them. They keep saying, once this happens, then I'll feel strong. But that belief keeps them dependent on outcomes, dependent on people, dependent on conditions they don't control. And dependence is the opposite of power. Here's the truth that changes everything. You are the source, not your job, not your past, not your environment. The moment you understand that, you stop waiting and you start creating. Everything you want in your life begins internally. Confidence doesn't arrive after success, it creates success. Certainty doesn't come from guarantees, it comes from decision. Strength doesn't show up when fear disappears, it shows up when you decide to act anyway. The source has always been inside you. You're just taught to look everywhere else. From the time you were young, you were conditioned to seek approval, good grades, praise, permission, and slowly, without realizing it, you learn to outsource your sense of worth. You learn to ask the world, am I enough, instead of answering that question for yourself. And when you do that, your emotional state becomes fragile because the world is inconsistent. People are inconsistent. Circumstances are inconsistent. But when you become the source, stability returns. You stop asking, what do I get? And start asking, who do I choose to be? And that shift changes how you walk, how you speak, how you decide. Being the source means you don't wait for motivation. You generate it. You don't wait for belief. You practice it. You don't wait for confidence. You CT in alignment with it until it becomes real. This is not arrogance. This is ownership. Most people give away their power emotionally every day without noticing. A comment ruins their mood. A delay kills their energy. A setback defines their identity. And every time that happens, they're saying, something outside me decides how I feel. That's a dangerous agreement to make with life. Powerful people live by a different agreement. They decide their emotional state first, then deal with the world from that place. They feel disappointment, but they don't live there. They feel fear, but they don't surrender to it. They feel uncertainty, but they don't freeze because their sense of control comes from within. Being the source doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're no longer controlled. You still listen, you still learn, you still adapt. But you don't hand over the steering wheel of your emotions to anyone else. This is why inner certainty is so magnetic. People are drawn to those who don't need to be convinced of their worth, who don't need constant reassurance, who don't collapse under pressure, not because they're perfect, but because they're grounded. When you are the source, rejection doesn't destroy you, it informs you. Failure doesn't define you, it refines you. Criticism doesn't stop you, it sharpens you, because your foundation isn't external, it's internal. And here's the key, being the source is a daily decision, not a personality trait, not something you're born with. It's reinforced through words, through habits, through how you respond when things don't go your way. Every morning when you speak strong words to yourself, you're reminding your nervous system where power lives. You're saying, I don't wait for life to make me feel ready, I decide. And the more you repeat that decision, the more natural it becomes. At first, it feels like effort. Then it feels like discipline. Eventually, it feels like identity. This is how you stop living reactively. This is how you stop needing perfect conditions. This is how you stop giving your best only when things are easy. Because when you're the source, you carry your strength with you into uncertainty, into challenge, into rooms where no one believes in you yet. And that strength changes how you show up long before results do. People often ask how to build unshakable confidence. The answer isn't more success. It's less dependence, less waiting, less outsourcing, more ownership. You don't need life to go your way to feel powerful. You need to trust yourself to handle whatever comes your way. And that trust is built by choosing to be the source again and again. So stop asking the world to give you permission. Stop waiting for the moment when you finally feel ready. Decide who you are now. Decide how you show up now. Decide how you speak to yourself now. Because when you realize you are the source, nothing outside you gets to decide your power ever again.